Hello, my name is Lucia Patch, and my guest today is Leah Darrow, all the way from America, a former contestant on the hit TV show America's Next Top Model. In this interview, Leah will be sharing with us her profound conversion story that reshaped her life and heightened her faith. Welcome, Leah.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Leah, please tell us a little bit about your background and what it looked like before you got into the modeling profession.
Yeah, sure. I've always loved fashion. I've always been one of those girls that have enjoyed it and loved putting together a great outfit or just the colors of it and things like that. However, for me as a young girl, that never really translated into I want to be a fashion model. I didn't really think that wasn't a goal of mine or this type of profession I was really going after. But I did love fashion. I love everything about it. Growing up in America and with the culture around me, as a young girl, got into a point where I had a choice to make when I was pretty young. I was 15 years old, and I had a choice to make if I was going to accept real love, authentic love, sacrificial love, or if I was going to accept imitation love and the love that is promoted through our culture and our world today. And at 15 years old, I made a decision, and I accepted that imitation love. And I ended up losing my virginity, unfortunately, at a very young age. And that greatly affected me in terms of how I saw love, defined love, and then went after love in the future. And that began a downhill slide away from my Catholic faith that I was brought up with. And it created standards of a relationship for me that involved that type of love, that I began to define love as a very physical expression, a body expression, that something that you do with your body, that was love. And I neglected the real definition of it and what I was really being called to as a Christian, as a Catholic, to what love really was. And so it created this world for me that opened up the door to culture and to accept everything that pop culture has to offer because it supported that lifestyle. And that began just this pretty wild and crazy life. So by the time I appeared on America's Next Top Model, I was already pretty far from my faith, pretty worldly by some people's standards, and I looked to the world to find my happiness, to find love, to find success, beauty, all of it, fame, and I looked to the world for all of those answers.
As we do.
Yes, we do sometimes, and of course, fortunately for me, God really touched my heart and allowed me to see in a moment that change was possible, and in a very special time in the middle of a photo shoot, actually. After Top Model, I was living in New York. That did happen. I had this moment of reversion. Yeah, well, in that moment, this is a couple years after America's Next Top Model, so I was on cycle 3, I was eliminated. I decided to stay in New York and live in New York City to pursue modeling and to pursue that world, and I did do that. I got some modeling jobs and was making really good money, and my picture from the show is in Times Square, and it's on the side of subways and taxi cabs, and you had all this little fame starting to build with it, or at least being able to be recognized, and with vanity that makes you feel very important and everything. So I was, and I get a phone call from an international magazine to ask me to do a photo shoot for them, and it would be very different. It'd be a different look than what I had done in the past with modeling. They told me that I had more to offer, and so I really wanted to know about that. Oh, tell me more, exactly. Tell me all that I have to offer. And they said, yeah, well, we think you can do something that's very sexy and very edgy. And I just thought, and for me at the time, that sounded okay. It was congruent with my immodest lifestyle. So I went with it. And I said, absolutely. I did the photo shoot. And it was there in that photo shoot where I was in there, and the photographer was taking picture after picture. And this flash from the camera came across my face. And I was kind of looking off to the side, blinking to kind of regain my focus. But in that blinking and in that trying to gain my focus, I saw this little picture of myself inside my head. Like we often do, I guess, when our eyes hit a flash and we blink and we see the image of what we just were looking at. The same thing was for me, but I saw myself wearing the immodest outfit. I had my hands cupped together at my waist. I raised them all the way up to my forehead together,
This is during the shoot.
This is during the shoot. This lasted a few seconds.
Did you actually see yourself doing that, or did you actually do it?
I saw myself doing it inside my head. It was like this little picture inside my head as I was blinking.
Yes, right in the midst of the shoot.
Absolutely, and it was very quick. Just lasted a few seconds, but I had my hands together, raised them up, and then I was looking out and up, and what I saw out and up above me was a shadowy face of a man's face. I didn't see any features, nothing like that, but he had looked at my hands, and then he bowed his head as if in disappointment. And I pulled my hands right back down to see what was in them, like what was so disappointing, and they were empty. There's nothing in them. And that was it. That was the end of what I saw in my head. And I knew it was true. I don't care if people say it was a bad ham sandwich or if it was a real spiritual moment, but I knew it was true. I knew everything that God had given me, all my gifts and talents, I wasted on myself. I wasted on me. And I just didn't want to do that anymore. So I saw a really good reflection of my life, and I was unhappy with it. And I knew where I needed to go, where I needed to turn, and it wasn't to the world anymore.
Leah, you know, when you get a word inside your soul, in your being, there is absolutely no denying it. Although we do deny it, I'm afraid. But truly, we can't deny it. We know the truth of it.
So what did I do after that? God gave me this invitation, and at this point, I accepted. Like I said, I knew it was true, and I knew I wanted a better life. I knew I wanted to change the world and do something good in the world, and what I was doing, that wasn't the good thing. That wasn't the best thing I could do for the world. And so I walked out of the photo shoot, I left, and, I did the only thing a girl could do.
When you were doing modeling, did you have expectations, and were those expectations fulfilled?
For me, no, I was never fulfilled. I was never completely fulfilled. I would have these moments where sometimes my pleasures were met at one point or the other, my thoughts or ideas about the profession were met, but I always felt like I wasn't good enough. I always felt like there was something missing in me, and I had to do something more. Maybe I needed to be thinner, or change this of me, or change how I look here or that, or act a little bit different, or be this type of a girl for people to like me, to want me, to book me, to be a part of this campaign or this ad, or get this job. As a model, you just know you're never good enough. And you know that because every picture you take is photoshopped or edited. So you're not good enough. If it was good enough, then the picture would be left undone.
Indeed. It's more of a role play, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, you do. And I think for a lot of us models, we really know how to act happy. We portray happiness with that great smile and whatever it is very quickly, right? And you look at these ads and you look at all the things going on and you just think, wow, like I want to be like that happy. Whether we subconsciously think that or not. And so, yeah, it's a problem in that industry for us to, authenticity is not regarded as something that they go after, it seems.
And thank God for you, because you can voice publicly now the truth of what it really is like behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I think the message that I give, the message that I share, my story that I share it's nothing new. It's been said by a lot of people in the past, people who say it today, just some people maybe are scared to say it in front of a crowd or with a microphone. But with God's grace and courage, I'm happy to share it. I'm happy to share even some of my faults, so the truth about my life, because I think it can speak to others to let them know that change is possible. And speaking of that change, that's kind of where I was at the end of that photo shoot. I walked out and wasn't quite sure what to do, but I guess I did the only thing a girl could do. After I walked out, I went home and I called my dad.
Oh, and how did your dad react?
Well, I called my dad, and I was living in New York City, and my parents were living back in the state of Missouri, so in the middle of the U.S. And I called him, and I just said, Dad, if you don't come and get me, I'm going to lose my soul. And
well, that's a powerful statement.
It was, and it was. I said it verbatim, and there's a long pause, and then he just quietly said, okay, baby, I'm coming to get you. And my father drove 2,000 miles, maybe something close to 5,000 kilometers, maybe something like that, across the United States, 24 hours of driving, nonstop, didn't stop, and he came and he picked me up.
Wow, Leah. It sounds like your foundational faith all came to a cul-de-sac in that moment, all came together, and you were able to tap into that resource inside your soul.
I mostly took it all in. I was very blessed. I'm the oldest of 6 kids. They're my best friends, my brothers and sisters. I have great parents. I'm very blessed with that. They raised us in the Catholic Church. They believed, we read the Bible quite a bit. We said our rosary every night, some traditional Catholic things that families do. And I really loved it. I love God. And I loved how my parents talked about God and about how much Jesus loves us and Jesus is there for us and Jesus has saved us from our sins. And I believed it and I loved it. My parents were so joyful too when they talked about it. Like it wasn't, anything bad or mean or anything. They were always happy when they talked about God. And so I was very blessed to have that lifestyle. When I was younger, and especially at the moment when I was 15 and I chose that imitation form of love and really had a hard time after that, it wasn't that I rebelled against the church. I was rebelling against my own self. I felt so terrible about my life and my decisions. And what I did do is I did not understand God's mercy.
People say we don't need to go to church. We don't need God.
Yeah.
I'm a good person.
Oh, yes, I hear that a lot. In fact, I said that a lot. I'm a good person. And I would justify the good person with things like, the silly things like, oh, well, I'm good to other people. I'm nice to them. I try to be good and help them out. I use my blinker when I change lanes, or I recycle, kind of these silly things. I'm joking a little bit, but I had all these definitions of being a good person. And basically, I defined good in a way that justified my actions. And I made myself my own final end. I made myself the end all, begin all. And I chose not to look to my Creator as my final end. And when we do that, we put ourselves on a very dangerous path.
Now, I'll bring you back now to the time with your dad, because I felt that was important to draw that out of you.
Absolutely, yeah. So my dad drives across the United States, halfway across the U.S. to pick me up. He gets to my doorstep. I'm a mess. I've been weeping and crying and just really thinking about my whole life. What have I done? And I've left my career. I walked out on this photo shoot. I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore. And I chose that and I wanted that. But what was I going to do? And so my dad gets to the front door, and the first thing he says, and what he looks like, he's got the biggest smile on his face, and he says, "I'm so happy to see you." And I just thought, you're crazy.
Prodigal daughter?
Yes, exactly. I just thought, how could you be happy to see me? And I was expecting him and thought I deserved for him to get to the front door and say, "You're such a screw up. What's wrong with you? You've disappointed your mother and I. Come on, let's go home." And I thought I deserved that, but maybe in a way I guess I did. But my father did such a beautiful job, and he really reflected the love of God the Father. And he just looked at me, and he just says, "I love you, and I'm happy to see you. I'm happy you're coming home." And I was all ready to go, and I said, "Okay, Dad, well, let's go." And I was getting my bags, and we're ready to leave. And he says, "Okay, but first we're going to go to confession." And for Catholics, that is how we reconcile ourselves with God. We go to confession, and I thought, oh boy, I don't know if I can do it. And my dad saw the hesitancy in my face, and he just said, "Leah, you called and you said you needed to come home. Well, I'm here to take you home, and church is home."
Leah, how did you feel after confession? What was that like for you?
Oh, it had been years. It had been at least 2 years since I had been to confession. And if I went to confession before that, I wasn't giving God everything. I wasn't confessing all of my sins to God, only the ones that I felt comfortable saying.
As if you didn't know.
Right, exactly. So it had been at least a couple of years since I've been to confession, which was way too long. And it was very difficult. The priest was very good in keeping me focused and helping me through the process to give all of my sins to Christ, and I can still feel that feeling as I walked out. I mean, I remember I always felt like I was at war with myself. Like I always felt a little heavy, a little down, like there's bricks on top of my chest a little bit. Like I never really felt free. I never had that freedom. I didn't have that joy. And I walked out of the confessional, and I honestly actually felt lighter. I walked out, I just thought, this is how it's supposed to be. I just couldn't believe I gave God 10 years of my life at that point, of all of my sins, all of my pain, all of my suffering, every dark thing. I just wanted to scoop it out of my heart and just give it to Christ. And he took that. He forgives us. He forgave me. And he gives me compassion, mercy, and peace. I mean, it's a pretty good deal, if you ask me.
It sounds like you came out to the catwalk of your own life.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's right, especially from my modeling background. You walk a runway, right? You walk up and down, and it's over. But truly, the spiritual life really is a runway of life, where you're walking, and just as you can kind of maybe look at this with the catwalk or with the runway, it's a narrow space, and that is the spiritual life. It's saying no to the wide road and getting on the path of the straight and narrow road.
So now you've turned away and come back to God. What's your identity? What's your true purpose?
Oh, my first and foremost identity is a child of God, that I am his, that he is there for me, he is my Father, that he has sent us his Son, Jesus Christ, to suffer and die for us and for our sins, and has saved us by his precious blood. That is my identity. No matter what I do in my profession or what I do every day, that is who I am. And I was purchased at a price. And he loves us, and he's calling us all home, to him, to God, our final end. And so that's how I see myself. That is my identity of who I am. And the work God has given me to do, and understanding that identity more, and in the work that he's done in my heart to heal my wounds from my past, seems to be what I'm doing now. One of the new vocations that I've started with Christ and with God is I just got married 2 months ago.
I know, and I've just met your gorgeous husband.
Yes, he is gorgeous. He's wonderful. And that's also my identity, is that I'm a child of God, but I'm also a wife. And I love my husband, and he wants my greatest good. You know, he really loves me. He wants me to be good. He wants me to be holy. He wants me to be a saint one day. And so, that's also who I am. I'm also a wife, and I'm so proud of that. And then on top of all that, God's given me great work to do, even with my husband too, of spreading this message of conversion and mercy, of modesty, of chastity, of real love, of that we can say no to the world and yes to God and be happy and joyful.
So Leah, what would you say to those people out there who are looking for a loving relationship?
Yeah, sometimes we can be, in a sense, a little too desperate. We have to look everywhere and every place for somebody. We have to find somebody because, in a sense, we see our identity with the relationship or the person. So once it's going to have to come back to figure out, okay, who are you? Who is your identity? Like, how do you see yourself honestly? And when it's ordered well and ordered right, in line with God, it makes other things a little bit easier. I mean, a message to guys and girls out there. I speak a lot to women, co-ed as well, but a lot to women. And we all have like this dream guy that we think of, right?
Mr. Right.
Yes, and so we always think of Mr. Right. And he's usually, when we think of him, we always describe him as this virtuous man, this man who practices virtue, who's strong, who's honest, who has chivalry, right? He has good manners. He takes care of us. He provides for us. He's smart. He's intelligent. He does charity work. He does all these things. He's a virtuous man, right? This guy is not hanging out at the clubs. Our Mr. Right is not there. And the funny thing is, we want this Mr. Right. We want to marry this Mr. Right. Well, then he's not looking for some girl at the clubs. Mr. Right is looking up and out for that great girl, a woman who's going to know who she is, know her worth, know her virtue, and be proud of it. And proud to say, yeah, I'm waiting for real love. See, I'm worth real love. I'm worth a love that is going to last forever, not just to, fulfill my base pleasures for a few minutes. And so I'm going to hold on to my dignity, practice purity in that. So these Mr. Right guys, these dream guys of ours that we so want to be with, they're looking for their dream girl, their Mrs. Right girl. And so we have to raise the bar. We have to raise the bar, especially for us ladies, to say, okay, we need to raise the standards of who we are and what we expect of ourselves and of others, and then live according to that.
You work within fashion, within the Catholic Church, is that right? Or
Well, I have worked with an organization called Pure Fashion before in the past, which is a great organization. It's in the U.S. and other parts of the world as well. It promotes purity, modesty, and chastity through our actions, words, and dress. And it targets young ladies in high school age. So I have worked in the past with them, and it's been really wonderful. I also speak just plainly on talks on modesty, the faithful fashionista, as I've coined the phrase, chastity, purity, and how it's all connected together. So it's been a really wild ride, but I love it.
Could you please define what modesty and chastity is in the language that you're using it in?
Absolutely. So chastity is a moral virtue, and it's underneath the cardinal virtue of temperance. So temperance is one of the 4 cardinal virtues, and it has something to do with moderation, self-control. I think we all can agree we need a little bit more self-control in this world. Okay, so chastity fits underneath that. And chastity is knowing our sexuality and fitting it to the right state in life, whether we are single or married or consecrated or a priest. That chastity can be seen in all of that. And it's incorporating and integrating our sexuality with our spiritual being as well. Okay. It also, as a side definition to chastity, it is refusing to let our base pleasures and desires control us. Is that we are in control of them and they are not in control of us. So we need not be making decisions only on our feelings, and whatever feels right or feels good. That, you know, God did come, Christ did come to take away our sins, and he died for that. He's not come to take away our brains. We need to use them and be smart about that. And modesty is a way that we can practice chastity. In fact, John Paul II, in his book, Love and Responsibility, has a great quip. He's got a line that says, modesty is the guardian of chastity. So modesty is one of the expressions of it. Modesty is not just about dress, not just about fashion, but also about our words, our speech, and our behaviors and actions. And it is, in terms of fashion, it is veiling what always should remain hidden.
Leah, we've run out of time, but I just want to say thank you so much. I feel so privileged and so honored and so fortunate to have met someone like you in my life, and to have a one-on-one discussion with you about your sacred ground was just amazing.
Thank you.
And in my humble view, Leah, your message of hope and encouragement in today's pop culture or hedonistic culture is timely and desperately needed. And I, for one, want to salute you for responding to God's call in your heart, actioning it, and being such an exemplary model of the virtuous messages that you are giving out to our world today. Thank you, Leah.
Thank you so much.